Hello and welcome to Uncanny Book Club. I'm Isaac Vaderspiel, and joining me as always is my co-host Adam Ward.
It's ya boy from the far north.
This time finishing the Brood Saga for reals.
For reals this time.
It would be something though if we, just got so caught up in issue 166 that we couldn't make it to 167.
I'm not worried about it. I feel confident in our ability to just hit on the most important bits, We're professionals now.
Something like that. A whole year.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, high fives all around.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm very happy, man. It's been good. Thank you for everybody who's listened over the past year. If you're new and listening to this for the very first time, odd place to jump in, but welcome.
Maybe they really like the end of the Brood Saga. They're really into the space whales.
Well, the Magic Mini was very popular.
Magic, also cool.
So, logical place, I guess, to jump in would be the Brood Saga, which you may remember I have conflicted feelings about.
Super fair. So, without getting too far into it, would you say you have more conflicting feelings about the previous two that we did, or issue 166? Where are your conflicts?
I think it's systemic to the arc entirely.
Sure.
Like, I'll get to it. But I think, like, the biggest strength of these issues has been the art.
Mm-hmm. They've done some cool stuff.
They've really kind of embraced the alienness and a bit of the horror elements over these, like, last few issues, including, the kind of prelude to all of this. So that's been a start, and I really have enjoyed how creatures like the Acanti, like these big space whale ships, cool, like super cool creature, very unique. I don't know that I ever would have thought of something like that.
We liked them since their intro before they, gave them all the backstory. Just like, it's a very cool design that they turned this big space whale into a big space whale that's also a spaceship.
Yeah, and now the space whale, it has a space whale prophet.
As one does.
For some reason. I mean, I can appreciate things from the perspective that you're taking a creature and ultimately this character now of the Acanti and this prophet of theirs and making a character out of something that I wouldn't necessarily expect, because I certainly didn't expect where this story went. Like,
sure.
When we first encountered the Brood, long before we got into all of these shenanigans, I don't know that I would have thought this is where this was going to go. But here we are. Because frankly, like, the Acanti stuff really isn't needed. Like you could really solve this story without that additional subplot, but it's there. So here we are.
Well, if that's not teeing us up for a plot summary, I don't know what is.
Yeah, man. Hit us with it, because it's a biggie.
Issue 166 starts by introducing a bit more history of the Brood's living ships, the Acanti. We then check in with Binary and see her destroying a Brood base and killing an Acanti who can't be freed from their slaver virus. An astral projection of Storm that encounters her in space and leads her into the mouth of an infant Acanti. Storm reveals to her that she's become one with the Acanti infant. Eventually, we see the whole crew together and discuss some next steps. Storm lore dumps on the Acanti. They're basically the warp speed whales from Star Wars Rebels or whatever it was. She reveals that the Brood enslaved their leader, and the Acanti are doomed unless its soul can be freed so that another prophet singer may lead the Acanti. The soul is trapped in the carcass of the Acanti the X-Men were being held at down on the planet. A plan is formed, and Storm and Carol serve as bait while the rest of the team beams down. We see the Queen ordering their capture, but an unknown Brood telepathically tells her that the X-Men are tricking her. It appears a member of the team has started their transformation and is spying for the Queen. Storm and Carol battle the Brood in space and eventually are joined by the Starjammers. Meanwhile, the X-Men fight various creatures who prey upon the Brood near where the soul is located. Kitty is hurled through a wall and ends up in a nest with giant eggs and brood bones. Wolverine senses something is up with Scott's high level of hostility and poor aim and rips his visor off, revealing brood eyes. We jump back to Kitty and see her being pursued by a team of brood, but is then saved when a small dragon, Lockheed, roasts them. An opening appears and she walks toward the light of the Acanti soul. The Queen and Brood Cyclops finish capturing the X-Men, but without eyelids, he loses control of his powers. Wolverine takes advantage of the situation and breaks free of his bonds and holds the Queen hostage. The X-Men, Brood Cyclops, and Queen then rejoin Kitty and enter the Soul Room, but the Queen hits Logan with a massive dose of venom, and the X-Men all begin their transformation. Luckily, Carol flies in to save the day, and her energy blast allows the soul to free itself and join with the young Acanti prophet singer. We see the words, "The Acanti are at last free." Freeing the soul also stops the X-Men's transformation, and the Queen is turned into solid crystal. But not before she gave a warning. A final embryo exists, and when it hatches, your world is doomed. Slee's world blows up, Aurora regains her body and joins with the team, and the X-Men appear to have saved the day. But it's not all happy endings, as Wolverine reveals the final words of the Brood Queen and announces that Charles Xavier must be the one who is hosting the final brood embryo. Next issue, we meet the New Mutants in Goldilocks Syndrome.
And the Three Bears. Well, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, I think our opinions on this one veer in slightly different directions. So, I think overall, if we're looking at, like the Brood Saga 166 kind of being the end to it, I feel like we ended fairly strong. I was a little wishy-washy on how I feel about the Acanti stuff, especially since a lot of it is just kind of thrown in right at the end. And I mean, does it have to be there? Not really. It's really just thrown in and we deal with it. But I feel like a bigger issue for me were some of those middle issues, Storm doing astral form things.
Yep. That was weird.
But overall, I feel like we ended up getting a proper conclusion. I was satisfied with the ending, even if it's not like, oh, I'm super into the Acanti or whatever.
Yeah.
And part of me also does like, maybe even if like the lore that's been cooked up for the Acanti didn't really hit home, I do appreciate that they looped back on, like, hey, these ships that we designed are really baller. They're super cool. Could we work them into like a future issue a little bit? So, looping back in on it, I like that they're taking another go at it versus just letting it be.
Okay. I respect all of that. I don't think we're like that far off on the Acanti stuff, honestly. Like, I think if it would have been standalone, right? Like beyond its inclusion here, if it would have been maybe something that we had before this big kickoff with the Brood, or, like it was included somewhere else or in the future, whenever it was. It's really cool.
It's genuinely weird that it's all packed into this issue.
It's genuinely really fascinating. Like, it's cool sci-fi. I think in that setting and removed from the story would have been very enjoyable, and I would have liked it because it is weird and spacey and sci-fi. And I like that inclusion in the X-Men because it's not something that I would have necessarily have expected when we started reading this a year ago. So I like the space stuff. It's just a weird inclusion here. As for like the overall conclusion, I mean, I appreciate that it is going to essentially get wrapped up. It's odd that, because the Queen was frozen or whatever the hell happened to her. Crystallized.
Like meth.
And this then caused the chain reaction of preventing all the X-Men from turning into Brood, right?
I read it as like the soul escaping, like, wishy-washy magical powers kind of like purified them and fixed them.
Gotcha. So space whale powers, yeah.
The space whale powers, I mean, like astral projection is in the deck, but I read it as like, oh, the soul's finally able to leave. As it goes out, it turns the brood to crystal for reasons, and then it also handles the brood embryos inside the X-Men, which I agree is kind of weird. However, I was a little concerned of how are they going to get out of this? Wolverine makes sense. I think they could do something interesting where, like, maybe Kitty can, like, phase her embryo out of her or something really weird like that. But, like, for the rest of them, like, what are we looking at? How are they going to solve this? And I think an obvious solution is like, oh, maybe if you kill the queen, maybe it's all chill, which doesn't appear to be the case since the queen is maybe dead and there's still an embryo, a little brood baby on Earth. I don't know what it is, but the resolution to being cured of the brood doesn't make me upset for whatever reason.
I think, it's certainly a MacGuffin, right? Like hey, we need to solve this problem with the queen brood. We've established through this story that the X-Men have a red line that they are not willing to cross, with the exception of somebody like Wolverine. Many of them even having a problem seemingly defending themselves in some cases, looking at you, Peter, right? Like he has second-guessed himself a lot in terms of like engaging or like overdoing it, even when his own personal well-being was at great risk. So you could have just had Wolverine,
kill all
do
the
the
X-Men?
job. No. Like, no, not that.
You're wanting a way different comic.
No. I don't want him to like
introduce the Ultimates line in the 70s.
I don't want him to whack the X-Men. I just think like you could have even have had Carol just handle the situation. We saw her have this transformation,
the power of the sun,
and she was a core element of the story. But at the same time, you could have probably have just leaned on Carol to have been the key to setting them free or whatever. And Charles is exempt from this because he wasn't there, which is essentially what happened anyways.
Like unlocking the mystery of her binary powers.
Yeah, it was also a little odd because, like, didn't we already know? I guess we didn't know about the embryo that was in him, but simply that the brood had infected his mind, I guess is how we are to interpret that interaction.
Well, I feel like earlier we discussed that being the case where when he was comatose, us wondering, like, is he just infected with the brood? It's weird that it's taken a long time. I'm assuming they can, strategically sort of buy their time or whatever, but it's been a really long time since it's happened.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about his whole transformation when we get to the next issue. But on the note of transformation, I, again, want to just credit the creative team for really leaning into this body horror element that we kind of see play out across this entire arc. And we see it again in here with this awesome fight scene between Logan and Cyclops. We've been kind of building up this tension over the last couple of issues that they're in space and, Scott's being too much of a Boy Scout and Logan's trying to take a hold of the situation because he feels he's the only one capable of doing what is needed to be done. And this all culminates with Logan realizing that something is off. Scott is not himself, rips that visor off, sees these buggy eyes. It's pretty awesome. I really enjoyed how they've kind of explored the different ways they could depict these transformations, right? And we essentially end up seeing like two people kind of succumb ultimately to this transformation. I'm looking at Storm as one, and then as we will get to Charles. Only they really brushed aside that they could just save Storm. They just used space medicine, and her consciousness, I guess, was transferred back into her body.
It's a little unclear about how Storm was fixed. Did the Acanti grow her a brand new body, or did it just like yank a bunch of stuff out and regrow a bunch of things?
Oh, it says it right here, actually. I'm looking at the panel. It's on the last page. And Storm says, as healthy as I've ever been, kitten, courtesy of the Prophet Singer. The soul of the Prophet Singer restored me as easily as he restored you. He asked me to stay with the Acanti for all his newfound awareness and maturity. Still very much a child, my child, but I found I did not want to leave you. And so he let me go. This is even funnier knowing how the next issue ends.
I was just thinking about that, like the Storm's like jealousy bit, or are you talking about Charles' resolution?
I'm talking about the Charles situation at the very end and his interaction with Kitty, because here we have Storm being like, no, I'm not going to go with the Acanti, who I have now developed a very motherly bond with. Instead, I want to stay here with you and the X-Men. And then Charles is going to march right back in and just muck it all up.
Well, to be fair, still living at the same place or whatever. But we'll get into that. But speaking of Charles, you described, and we'll get into this, but you described this like Acanti soul fixing the X-Men as like a MacGuffin to their situation. I feel like next issue is a lot more guilty of that. Of just like, how are they going to fix this?
Yeah, we'll get into it because I did make a note about it, as I think this becomes a staple ultimately of the X-Men going forward from this point on.
Cloning?
Yep.
Borrowing a lot of things from Star Wars in these issues. We got clones, we got hyperspeed traveling space whales, probably something else.
Yeah, probably. Aliens.
Star Wars invented those, right?
Blasters.
There are some blasters. Wonder if Kitty keeps that as part of just like her general repertoire.
So since we're kind of talking about Kitty, she plays an important role here again.
She finds the soul. Incidentally.
Hey, sometimes you just gotta get flung around.
Get thrown through a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought her landing in this pit, I like the design ultimately of the spider. I'm trying to find the panel.
Is there a spider?
It looked like a little spider, man. Yeah.
I thought that was like the dragon nest.
No. Maybe. It looks like a spider, but now that I'm looking at it, I just looked at it wrong. And she calls it a sleazoid skeleton, so I guess that's just a brood skeleton. Oh, and the eggs.
Yeah. Oh, that does look like it. I understand what you're seeing.
And I didn't realize that she even landed in the nest that Lockheed was in.
Mm-hmm.
This makes so much more sense. I thought he was just roaming around. But Lockheed's introduction, this panel where we see him, is incredible. It's like a vertical panel, takes about half of the page.
He gives a little roar.
He has the roar going off behind him.
He turns some brood to ash.
And I appreciate that it makes him look so big here. And then we see how tiny he is. So sweet.
Oh, yeah. That's a really fun. Well, I feel like you have to start on the very page before when like the brood is like extremely scared, like almost looks like ears back like a cat, just like screaming by the black nebula. And then you have these panels that you just spoke of where it's like, oh, there's a giant dragon and he's breathing fire. And then the very next panel, there's like this little chunky derpy dragon. That's like the size of like a large cat.
It's a great introduction. And again, it's like, okay, we're just going to leave this little breadcrumb here. Maybe we'll see this dragon again.
When does he come back though? And how? Like, did he sneak back with them? I've been wondering this. Like, how does he escape the planet? He must just like sneak aboard.
I have to imagine. Or Kitty. It would have been fun if they,
Well, I don't think she knows where he is. It just would have been really fun if they worked him like just like kind of sneaking aboard in like the background and being a little sneaky dragon. I feel like given the introduction, they had plans for him.
Yeah.
Or just thought it was a really good goof.
I'm genuinely surprised that as of recording, there is no Lockheed in like Marvel Rivals or something. Or that it hasn't been, like, I'd be shocked. Like, if they're going to introduce Kitty Pryde in, like, the next X-Men film, you may as well.
Hopefully they do.
You gotta bring in Lockheed, man. Like, that is just merchandising 101.
Do they introduce, I guess it depends on what kind of storyline they start with, but do you think they introduce Kitty and Lockheed together, or does Lockheed join the squad as part of movie 1 or movie 2?
Yeah, who knows?
Maybe they could do Brood as movie 2 and then have Lockheed come aboard.
X-Men in space would be a cool setting, man.
Especially since they have a lot of really cool art to pull from if they wanted to pull from these specific comics.
Yeah. It would be cool to see something like Gladiator and just the Shi'ar in general.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, man. It's, I mean, as I said, this has been a lot of fun seeing the X-Men in space because it's not a setting that I traditionally would associate with them. And how wrong of
assumptions.
How wrong are my assumptions? Because it's been integral. So we kind of see the bromance continue between Logan and Carol Danvers in this, and she plays a very large role in saving the space whales
and the X-Men.
The
Day in total.
Don't know if I like Binary's design.
It's horrific. It's awful. The little sun thing, I hate it. It looks slightly better in this specific issue, I feel like, but I don't get it.
Well, it's because she has the power of a sun. So
I
she's
know.
glowing or something.
Really intense transformation.
Do you think it would have been better if she was stuck looking like that all the time? Like she was just permanently red?
That would be weird. It'd be way weird if her hair was always like that. Like if her hair was always replaced by a star. It's only like that in battle mode.
I mean, they do make her kind of look pretty badass here. Like shaking off the queen and like rescuing Logan, marching forth, doing what needs to be done. You know, really using that information she got from Storm to set the Acanti free. Then she just pops out of it at the very end. She's like, hey, partner, look at me.
Howdy.
Oh, man.
Logan, how's by you? They do like a little friend flirting.
They got a little funness to them.
Platonic.
Yes, quite platonic.
Wolverine still got his gal pal that we haven't seen in a really long time.
Yeah, hopefully they don't forget that.
I've seen the covers for the next few issues. I think we're gonna loop back on it. I feel confident.
All right, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to kind of getting back to Earth and the various threads that have been just kind of dangling there for a while. Because I'm assuming we've been dealing with this space stuff for quite a while now, and with that context,
at least weeks. It's enough time that the professor's like lost hope and gone into like a major depressive episode and thinking that he's killed yet another team of X-Men.
Again.
Yeah. How does this keep happening?
Why do I keep bringing in children? And Moira's like, it's what you gotta do, Charles. You gotta get in there. You gotta teach Charles, those kids. You're the only one.
Either you kill these kids or I'm going to have Magneto kill these kids.
She was just straight up like, hey, if you don't take these kids, you know what? I'm going to go bring them to Emma Frost because she'll take care of them. Do you want that, Charles? Do you want these kids being, raised to be bad? Is that what you want?
To be fair, in our brief time at the Massachusetts Academy, we saw significantly more students than we see at Charles's school.
Oh, man. I'm glad that we're going to be getting fresh blood around the house.
I hope they show up as background characters. Like, I hope it's not just like completely separate. I want to see the whole picture.
Well, if they're back at the mansion, which it appears to be so, which also adds to the amount of time they've been away. Right? Because they would have been on that island for a while.
It got rebuilt fast because of like Shi'ar tech or something like that. I swear I read that somewhere in one of these books.
Okay, space tech fixed the house.
Maybe it built it fast.
Maybe I missed it.
Like one of those 3D printed houses.
Yeah, and you put it back together like Legos.
Mm-hmm. Issue 167 opens with the New Mutants watching some Magnum when the X-Men decide to burst through the walls of the newly built X-Mansion. The New Mutants are pretty confused as to why some strangers are attacking them in their home, so a fight starts between them and the X-Men. Kitty sneaks upstairs with a fancy space gun and thinks she's found Xavier napping at his desk. He awakens and says that her hesitation will cost her. Meanwhile, the X-Men are starting to get the better of the younger team, but they're interrupted by Kitty being thrown from the balcony and a brood emerges from Xavier. Scott blasts him outside and the X-Men begin attacking him. The Xavier brood is faring pretty well, but Storm and Binary show up and the tide starts to turn. Storm says she could have slain the new brood queen with a bolt, but couldn't bring herself to do it. Wolverine says no shame in being who you are, and steps up saying he's the killer on the team. Scott does an old yeller and says that dealing with Xavier is his right and responsibility. Charles is able to bring his consciousness to the surface of the injured brood and says that the mental transformation is not yet completed, but that there is no other way, and begs Scott to finish him. Scott refuses, saying he heard the Phoenix say the same thing and that he won't watch Charles go the same way. He says the X-Men fight to preserve life, to create rather than destroy. He asks if there are any objections. Wolverine says lots. Storm says none. They take Professor X aboard the Starjammer to see what the ship's doctor, a little flying robot dude, can do. While they can't reverse the metamorphosis, they think they can create a clone of Charles and transfer his consciousness to it. Meanwhile, Kitty awakens in another medical bay and is thrilled to see Peter and Ileana. Storm is a little jealous and feels lonely. Scott and Corsair have another talk about what his plans are, staying on Earth or returning to space, and what Scott will do. Corsair informs Scott that he still has a set of grandparents on Earth and that he can meet them as well. Gladiator randomly shows up, bringing news to the Empress that Galactus returned to Earth to die. She's happy to hear that his threat has ended, but is pretty miffed when Gladiator informs her that Reed Richards restored Galactus's health. In her anger, she projects a hologram to Reed and Sue in their bedroom and says that if Galactus kills any worlds under the control of the Shi'ar, that the Fantastic Four will be held accountable. Professor X, now in a new body, makes his grand entrance and shocks the room when he stands up. He quickly loses his footing and doubles over in pain, though. It appears as though he will have to overcome some mental barriers to regain the ability to walk. Then Charles delivers the real shocker. He officially introduces the X-Men to the New Mutants and says that Kitty will be leaving the X-Men to join their squad and that his decision is final. Next issue. Professor Xavier is a jerk.
I'm going to take it one further and say that Charles Xavier is the biggest idiot in the entire world.
Oh, snap.
You heard it, man. I'm throwing it down. Like, Charles has continuously proven that he has bad judgment when it comes to these X-Men. He's been so removed from this team. Scott has an imprint on it. Storm has an imprint on it. And all of these members get along and gel and respect and know that their backs are covered, right? Like they trust each other. Charles has regularly overstepped, weighed in on matters that he is clearly oblivious on, has accused members of being unfit to be part of the team, like Logan. And once again, we have Kitty, who has really cemented her place on this team. And we have complimented the fact that Chris has emphasized Kitty as being more than just this child that has been, you know, a barrier rather than an asset. And instead, she's been integral to a lot of the stuff that we've experienced through this entire space series. So to come back to this, to say, hey, yeah, I was wrong. You don't deserve to be on this team. I'm going to put you with kids your own age. It's crazy. Like, it
is crazy.
It's so disrespectful.
If we were to go back in time, putting her on the kids' team is the correct choice if she was never on the X-Men. But at this point, the damage is basically already done. You know, just keep with it. She's part of the team. She's a real asset. I feel like she's matured a lot over the last several issues versus some of the earlier stuff. And I mean, like, if we're judging this at like a real life situation, like it was insane of him to put her on the X-Men. I don't think anyone's denying that, but it's equally, or at least almost as bad to be like, oh, no, you shouldn't be on that team. Like, come on, it's already done.
It's certainly in character for Charles at this point to just be like a pseudo antagonist for the team. Hey, you've just overcome these great odds. I'm coming in here to make sure I'm shaking it up, baby. Don't feel like you can feel settled because I'm going to take a team member away and I'm going to make you feel all like shit so that way we could cause some drama. There's no relaxation here at Charles Xavier School for Gifted Students.
It's going to be interesting to see how exactly they resolve this. Because, I mean, I don't think Kitty joins the New Mutants. I feel like Kitty stays with the X-Men. But, I mean, how are they going to show him the error of his ways? Or are they just going to say, like, hey, man, we're the X-Men, not you. You can lead the New Mutants, but we do what we do. And then they put on cool shades and walk away.
I hope it's that, but I don't think
that would be cool.
I don't think that'll be it. I don't know. I think they will basically prove that Kitty deserves to be on the team, and they'll all have one big hoorah hug, and then, yeah, Charles will just hopefully focus on the New Mutants because they could actually use his guidance.
They are pretty new to it.
So earlier I mentioned the many creative ways they've really emphasized these transformations between the various X-Men. And this was like our first full transformation that was legit. We did see Storm kind of have like a Animorph situation before, but it didn't hold. And I guess we did see that like Beast guy get transformed. But that was
not really though. But that was like in a flash.
Yeah, and that felt more like literally it felt like Animorph. You know, like he literally looked like he just transitioned in 4 panels over, and it was like very gradual. Whereas with a lot of the other characters that we've seen who have taken on aspects of the Brood during their transformations, albeit seemingly incredibly slow, I would have imagined by the time they took hold enough to make a Brood brow on Scott's face and give him Brood eyes, that would have been probably pretty long in this transformation cycle, but apparently not. Nonetheless, I thought that like this panel, man, that is here with Charles transforming.
It's crazy.
It is the nuts, right? Like we see
it's
like
the duck's nuts.
His mouth is entirely open. We see like his old human teeth being overcome by his Brood teeth. He has this big tongue. It's wild. And then they couldn't wrap up the Brood Saga without bringing back the lipstick wearing Brood.
Yeah, we do get just a touch of that,
just a tad, and I'm happy to see it back. Honestly, I've come to appreciate the vintage stylings of the lipstick Brood.
There is something about this issue. I think it's a different artist, but I don't feel the motivation to look. There is a lot of really weird or rushed art in this book, but that comes with the caveat of they obviously spent a lot of their limited time on the stuff that ultimately mattered more, that being the images of the transformation and other things like that, because, like you said, those panels are really sick.
They are very awesome.
I'm definitely okay with the scattered amount of pretty derpy art that appears here and there throughout the book, because there's also a lot of panels of, hey, this is pretty sweet. There's a lot of derp. There's a pretty strong amount of derpy art throughout this as I'm flipping through.
I think
it's a different artist.
I was not lazy, so I went and looked. So the penciler is Paul Smith, and Paul Smith was also the penciler in the last issue as well.
That is bizarre to me, because I feel like the last issue didn't have the issues that this one has.
Well, we did compliment that, like some of these panels, I'm looking at one right now with the Brood, and it is pretty wild. Like when it's yelling for when it yells by the Black Nebula, like there's a ton of detail in this Brood image.
Yeah.
Like it has crazy teeth. Like they really I think, leaned into the wackiness of the Brood, minus, the few times we saw the lipstick. But beyond that, like, they really made the Brood intimidating.
There's just a lot of really, like, even looking at if you look at the second page of 167, like, Cyclops' pose and the weird proportions of Colossus, and then also Wolverine Naruto running. It's such a weird page.
I gotta find Wolverine Naruto running.
It's on the second page of Goldilocks Syndrome, like 2-page spread where the X-Men burst through.
It's still such a bizarre entrance to me.
It's weird. Like, what is Scott firing at?
The way it's looking at this full art spread, the way his beams are being shot almost looks like they're turning into slabs of wood.
That's more of a Proteus thing.
Yeah. But they literally just fixed this house, and the first thing they do upon returning is wreck it again.
It's wild because the plan is also to send in Kitty to be like sneaky. So like, why not just start there? Like, being sneaky or like doing recon, seeing what the situation is versus like, we traveled here as fast as we could from light years away.
It's so strange, man. I don't know. It's odd. So a big highlight for me was the Scott and Corsair exchange that happens in this issue. I think it really, really emphasized the beautiful relationship that they've kind of developed as father and son, and Scott reconnecting with him, albeit in like a small way, right? And we see Corsair basically tell him, hey, I've been thinking about this a lot. The man I was before this pirate life is not who I am now. I can't stay here. Scott then says, hey, can I come with you? Will you take me? And he says, hey, if you want to come, you can come. I'm glad to have you. And then really kind of pulling back these layers on their family, and that his grandparents are still alive, and that he would love to take him to go and see them. And it was just such a beautiful moment in this story that I think really could have used more Corsair in it, frankly. The Starjammers were really set up, I think, to be important to the story, I think in a more direct way, instead of being what they became, which was a solvent for a problem. They cloned Xavier. So, like, they served a purpose for sure in the story, but Corsair, when you kind of look at the bigger picture of this entire space saga that we've been doing over the last many issues, Corsair has been like this new figure in Scott's life. He's been very important to the story. He's been important at making the Starjammers relevant literally at all. And we even see him take like a very important stance earlier in this arc when he was on Earth to basically say, hey, I'm going to go get Scott. And he even told his other son that he can't come, that he wouldn't take Havoc with him. So I really wish we would have seen Corsair play a more important role in this Brood story than what we got. But this outcome, I really like.
It's interesting that you paint this as like one of the positives, when I was like, my reaction was, this conversation is kind of a rehash of one that they had several issues ago. Like, even going so far as to use some of the same language. Like the line about him being decades behind the times, yet centuries ahead of them, is something that he already said to Scott when he was like, so what are you going to do? And I think maybe what has changed is like will you take me with you? I think last time they talked, he said, I don't know. So I do appreciate that development, but it just came off as weird to me of like, this didn't happen that long ago. It's weird that they started in the same way, but I do like that, us looping back on this specific situation. It does feel like we're going to maybe get a resolution to it soon. And I am a little curious to see if Scott decides to stay on Earth or if he takes a little break and does some space pirating for a bit.
So I actually think how you brought these comparisons full circle really serves, I think, the point, right? When we first see Corsair having this conversation with Scott, he's panicked. He's kind of coming to terms with the situation that he has now found himself in. He's having and feeling forced to connect with his long abandoned son, who he feels guilty of not having a relationship to begin with, and now finds himself feeling like maybe he would be better off outside of Scott's life. And I can, as a father, can understand that Corsair is probably going through the motions of trying to figure out this situation, having, been a shitty dad who left his kid behind. Albeit, he had to go deal with a bunch of other space stuff, but, he's been out of that for a while. So beyond that, I think coming back to it in this way really highlights, you're right, that relationship development, again, kind of showing that amount of time that has passed. And, I think it's safe to assume that Scott and Corsair have been hanging out and talking, and we really get to see Corsair accept that Scott's part of his life, and, revisiting it in the way that they did, really does emphasize that he has grown as a character and is willing to have Scott more permanently in his life, and that he doesn't want to just zoom back to space and never see him again. As I said, as a father, I really like those things and I'm a bit of a sop for it, but a boy needs his dad, and I think Scott will be better for it.
So one of the things we said we were going to come back around to was the Professor X, we'll call it MacGuffin situation of,
yes,
oh, he's transformed fully physically.
Yes, the cloning.
And it feels less natural to me than space whale magic for whatever reason. It's just kind of oh, and then he was fine.
Yeah, I think it definitely diminishes the stakes of everything, right?
That robot doctor dude, I feel like they've established he's pretty legit. I feel like he's done some wild stuff. He saved Peter. His credentials are bona fide, but I don't know. Is it possible because he's a telepath and maybe Lilandra is kind of a telepath too? I don't know. It's just weird that they're able to. How many clones does Charles go throughout the years? This is not the last time.
Certainly not. And anybody who read Krakoa knows it.
Oh, not even counting that.
Yeah, definitely you can't.
I was thinking about him, that he steals Phantom X's body or whatever right before Krakoa. Yeah, they go through a lot of blanks in Krakoa.
Yes, they do. And I think it served its purpose then. I think it was fine in whatever that setting, although I think some people will disagree.
It was good. It's wild that people are why couldn't it have stayed like that forever versus going back to status quo? It's what? We can't get into that here.
I actually think we might feel differently about it, honestly. But yes, I agree. That's a conversation for another day. Did you have anything else that you wanted to touch on?
No, I feel like a lot of my remaining stuff can kind of be summed up in the overall feelings, overall thoughts little section. I do think that this is kind of like an epilogue. If we look at the last issue as the finale, this is the little epilogue that comes after to wrap up some of the little things. And it sets us up for some interesting situations. What's going to happen with Kitty? What's Scott going to do? Storm does a little thing about her feeling lonely and no longer having all of Kitty's attention. Is she does that continue? Is she going to do something based off of that? So I don't know. It's teeing us up for the future. So I think for me, pretty happy-ish with how issue 166 wrapped up. I think a disappointing ending can sometimes negatively color the journey you took to get there. And I felt like things ended well enough that, I can look back on the Brood Saga and overall be like, thumbs up. That was good. I enjoyed that. 167 was, I don't know, just kind of okay. It was a little weird. Like the new mutant conflict was silly. The fight was fine. The tension was fine. There's a random bit about Galactus that is thrown in there and Lilandra threatening the Fantastic Four. A lot of this issue feels like setup for leaving the Brood Saga, like I had mentioned, and that's fine, but I don't know. There's just a lot of weird things all jumbled together in this issue, and I think it probably points us in a pretty good direction going forward, but overall it was, kind of okay. So for me, looking at the two together, I feel like a 7 to 7.5 feels right.
I think jumble is a very good word to describe everything that we just experienced. There's a lot happening. I mean, it had to be thrown into a double-sized issue to fit it all in. And I think it takes the reader having to really buy into the whale prophet stuff to, I think, appreciate the ending for what it is. I am not in that group of people who can, I think, appreciate the ending as of what it is. It could have just existed without space whales. And as I said, like, I think the Acanti, right? That's what they're called. The Acanti, the whales.
Correcto.
Though, like, that entire story, while I enjoyed the weirdness of it, I think could have been somewhere else and didn't really need to be a whole part of this. I think we could have gotten to the same conclusion in a more logical way. The art, for me, really carried these issues. I think the Brood were really painted as these ferocious monsters that can just rip you apart and, can metamorphosize you into being one of their own. I think we at times saw the X-Men be very vulnerable to this, and seemingly, when we started this journey and everything that Logan went through on the planet and, fighting it off and it being made a big deal that it's really because of his healing factor, to just kind of have the conclusion that we had, it's not what I would have liked, but there's a lot of good in these books. There's a lot of creativity. And so I agree with your assessment that the second part of our episode that focused on 167, it does set up some stuff. And generally, again, I felt like some of the art was really cool and the way the Brood were portrayed. And it just kind of felt like, okay, we're just going to firmly press a bow into this box and call it a day. And, we'll kind of, hey, the Fantastic Four are going to do stuff maybe one day with the Shi'ar, and that'll be a thing. And hey, we got these new mutants here, so get ready for that if you haven't read it already, because 3 issues have already come out by now. So at first when I saw Charles, I thought maybe, did something happen in those 3 issues to really like kickstart this whole thing? I don't know. I still don't know. Regardless, I overall enjoyed the Brood Saga, and just, it's not what I was hoping for in the end. And for that reason, I'm going to give it just a 7. I know that's not exceptionally low, but it's lower than what we've given other sagas that we've covered. I hope it's not the last that we see of the Brood.
I mean, I feel pretty confident that it's not. That does it for this episode of Uncanny Book Club. Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you next episode, where we'll discuss issues 168 to 170.
Thanks again for 1 year. Bye, everyone.
Woo! Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Uncanny Book Club. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share with a friend.